Alright, hello guys, in this video we're going to be talking about a new tropical development that's going to be going on over the East Coast. It's over Florida right now. We're going to be talking about that throughout this video though. But before I get started with this video, I would ask you to subscribe if you do like weather related content, and also make sure to check out the links in the description for my social medias. Now, stay tuned for this entire video because my forecast is going to be at the end, so none of this is what I'm calling for necessarily. This is just the things, the facts, what's going on in the area of concern, and at the end of the video I'll have my actual drawn forecast for you guys to see what I'm calling for to happen. Now you can see that here's our tropical intensity index, and you can see it's not a lot of favorable conditions there near Florida, green and yellow through a lot of those, which is highly unfavorable and unfavorable. But you can see as you get offshore of North Carolina, we do have a highly favorable region there. If it stays well enough offshore, it will hit and tap into some highly favorable conditions and be able to develop further as it reaches those red areas there along the East Coast. Now, here's our satellite right now, and you can see not a lot is happening. You can see that over Florida, that's where our low pressure system is at right now, right over north central Florida basically, and you can see there's not a lot of tall clouds out there, so not a lot of development has happened yet, but there is some clouds in the area, which is a sign that we could see some development soon. It does have the ingredients there. It is there to begin developing, which is good news for it. Now, here's your 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook. And you can see that, again, our area of concern is located right over north central Florida, maybe northeast Florida, and that's going to move into the Atlantic and go near the East Coast and track up it, whether it's offshore or right along onshore. That's going to be the question mark there, and we're going to have to see what happens as we start to get spaghetti models coming out over the next couple of hours. In the next 2 days, we'll see a lot more data for this storm and be able to pinpoint it a little bit closer what we think is going to happen. Now, here is, according to the European model, our percentage chance of development for a tropical depression, and that orange color, that darkest shade of orange there, is actually a 60 to 70%. So the European has a 60 to 70% chance of tropical depression status within this orange area. So this is a sign that the European thinks that we will have some decent development here. Now, there is a 0 to 10% chance of tropical storm status being obtained here according to the European, so it's very low chance of a tropical storm status as of right now according to this model, but tropical storm status is more than likely, or tropical depression status. I think I said that, but now here's your 10-meter wind speeds according to the ECMWF, which is again the European model. You see already near Florida we already do have 20 to 30 mile per hour winds here. We're going to move on one frame, and you can see as this moves offshore of South Carolina, you can see it starts to develop a little bit more as we get 30 to 32 mile per hour winds. And this is a pretty wide area of wind, but you can see most of the wind stays offshore, but that low pressure system is located just offshore of South Carolina. We're going to move on one more frame again. You can see by this point it is right onshore. It's pretty far inland actually in North Carolina, and the Outer Banks are getting 20 to 32 mile per hour winds by this point. So the Outer Banks could actually get heavily affected by this one. Areas in Virginia Beach, you could see right onshore, you could see 14 to 22 mile per hour winds there for the oceanfront areas along the beach. As you head more inland, you're only going to get about 10 to 15 mile per hour winds, so it will be gusty, but nothing damaging by any means. Don't underestimate this one though, because it could develop more than we do expect at this point. But as of right now, this doesn't look to be a damaging system for the Virginia area. The Outer Banks, though, we could get some slight damage with this one if you're getting winds that are 30 to 34 miles per hour. That's when we start talking about some potential damage, but nothing they're not used to out there in the Outer Banks. They deal with these types of systems all the time, so this isn't going to be anything that destroys the Outer Banks. As of right now, we don't think, at least. But there could be some damaging winds, so prepare for that. Things could get knocked over for sure. Just moving on one frame just to show that the low pressure system moves just offshore of Virginia Beach, and the winds start to subside as it gets really close to Virginia Beach though. And then you can see it starts to move offshore from that point. The eastern shore could be affected by this one, but after that, it looks to head into the ocean and basically go out to sea and not affect much land after that point. Now, here's where the Canadian model has it at, and you can see it has a little bit more offshore, still affecting the Outer Banks though, as it tracks right over the Outer Banks instead of to the west of the Outer Banks. So there would be less wind with this solution, so I would say this is the most favorable solution if you do live in North Carolina. You'd hope that the Canadian model is right, even though it has it tracking right over you. That would actually have the winds a little bit less intense over you guys while this system tracks up the East Coast. By the way, it has these winds reaching North Carolina and Virginia by Sunday. That's the day that it would affect North Carolina and Virginia. We are going to move on to our GFS Ensemble model, and you can see starting things out looks a lot like the European. There were just some winds to the west and east of Florida, and you can see it starts to move, and this is by late tonight. You can see it's right offshore of South Carolina and Virginia, right there on the border. Again, the winds stay pretty far offshore on this one, but things start to get pretty windy in North Carolina by tonight with 15-mile-per-hour winds in the southern Outer Banks by this point. But you can see this one has it traveling right on shore. The good news with this is it would hinder development if it did stay on land as it moves up the East Coast. Again, this is going to be a quick system. It's going to be out of the way by late tomorrow. This will be well offshore of Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, so we won't have to worry about it after that point. But for the next 2 days, we will have to worry about some damaging winds and some rain. Again, I'll talk about the rain at the end of the video. And then you can see it has it moving a lot like the European model had it moving, actually, just on shore of North Carolina. And this would, again, lead to some pretty strong winds there for the eastern shore. The GFS Ensemble model does not feel as confident in the heavy amounts of winds, the 20-mile-per-hour plus winds. It has it up in the upper teens there for the Outer Banks, which again is pretty gusty, but nothing too serious for you guys according to this model. 10-mile-per-hour winds, and this is by tomorrow evening. 10-mile-per-hour winds for Virginia Beach, maybe 12, so nothing too serious according to this model. And then it moves offshore. Not a big deal. So again, these models so far have it staying a tropical depression, not reaching tropical storm status whatsoever, which is good news. Now, here's our rainfall according to the European model, and I'm going to break this down. Now, in the green colors, that's anywhere from 0.1 to 0.5 inches of rain, so areas pretty far inland. Now, for the blues, you're at 0.5 to 1 inch of rain, so that's Virginia Beach, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I think Raleigh is just to the west of that, heading down into South Carolina, Georgia, and all along the eastern shore. That's the amount of rain we can expect here from this thing. Now, if you're in the yellow, you're from 1 inch to 1.7 inches if you're in the yellows and oranges. So that's going to be a lot of areas along the eastern seaboard as well. If you're in the red, you're at 1.7 to even 5 inches of rain, and not a lot of areas exceed this color, but you can see areas like Morehead City, Beaufort, Eastern Shore, we're all in the red. So we're up around 2 inches of rain. So this is going to be leading to a lot of rain. All coastal areas of South Carolina and Georgia as well are pretty close to 2 inches of rain, and then a lot of areas in Florida there. And then for that brown color there, just offshore of the Gulf Coast of Florida, we're around 6 inches of rain. So this is a lot of rainfall for you guys according to this model. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the GFS Ensemble model, and you can see it keeps things a little bit less intense there along the East Coast, as again, it keeps the storm a little bit further offshore than the rest of the models. So obviously the rainfall would follow suit and be a little bit further east. Areas in Florida, though, the rain is a little bit further north. So this is going to be interesting to see how much rain falls for certain areas. It's going to be fun to track this one live over the next 2 days and see if it tracks further inland or offshore to see where it's going to get the most rain. Now, again, along the Georgia and South Carolina coast, we're up near 2 inches of rain, but this one keeps the 2 inches of rain exclusively, basically, for the eastern shore in North Carolina. So that's that. Now we're at the Canadian model, and again, this is a lot more like the European model once again, where we have the 2 inches of rain plus along the entire eastern seaboard from Georgia up through northern North Carolina. So that's where we're expecting 2 inches of rain plus, according to this model, 3 inches for the eastern shore. So there could be a lot of rain for you guys over the next 2 days. Now, here's my official forecast for this one as of right now. I might update this, who knows. But for now, this is my final forecast for this one, as it's not too big of a deal. We do have our low pressure system located over Florida, and then we're going to have it move up the East Coast and eventually possibly even be onshore of South Carolina and North Carolina and Virginia. I doubt Virginia, though. I think it's going to move offshore after that. But for the most part, it looks like it's going to stay just offshore of these states if you take the consensus of all the models together. Also, the National Weather Service thinks this one's going to stay a little bit further offshore than the models are calling for right now. So I'm keeping this one kind of in the middle here. I think that there's a good chance, though, that it does track just onshore and kind of skims along the coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, and then heads offshore after that point. Anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this tropical outlook. Again, this is a lot like what I expect to be bringing you guys for the next few months as we head through the tropical season for the Atlantic. I'm expecting to be doing this for every single tropical disturbance that we get. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that and excited for the great tropical weather content that I'm bringing on this channel. It's something that I've been very excited to bring. I've worked really hard on these maps. So I hope you guys are just as excited to see what I have in store as far as these maps are concerned. I think they're very cool and I love making them. Anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed the video and I hope you guys stay safe if you're along the southeast coast here as this storm moves offshore. Hopefully by Monday we will be safe and all good to go after that. Anyway, guys, see you in the next video. Have a great 3 days as this storm affects the southeastern United States.